We are live. Hey, how is it going? Lee Hayward here with the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat for Friday, September the 22nd. Another Friday, come and gone, right? TGIF. And this is video chat day for the regulars of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat. And as always, I'm going to be hanging out here for the next hour, answering questions and topics of discussion that you, the viewers, submit through our live video chat. So I'm just going to wait a moment for people to pop onto our live stream. I see people jumping on board right now as I speak. Pop, pop, pop. As you're joining in, please let me know if this is coming through loud and clear on your end, if you can hear me and see me okay. I always want to make that check to make sure that it is coming through good on your end, because that's the most important thing. I don't want to be talking to dead air. I want to make sure that this is coming through loud and clear on your end. So as you pop onto our live stream, if you could do me a big favor and just type into the comment section, just say it is loud and clear and let me know, and I would greatly appreciate it. All right, seeing some regulars popping on there. We have Neil joining in, loud and clear, much appreciated. Thank you. We have Jesse is joining in. I'm doing well. Hopefully you're doing well as well. Awesome. So for those of you who are brand new to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chats, because I know every week we do get some new people joining in. First off, I want to welcome you. It's always nice to have new people joining in. And the way these video chats work is I'm going to be hanging out here and answering questions and topics of discussion that you have related to fitness and nutrition, building muscle, losing fat, any specific challenges that you may be dealing with when it comes to your workouts, you know, your fat loss program, your muscle building program, whatever it is that you're working on. Feel free to type those questions and topics of discussion into our chat window, and I'll do the best that I can to help you out over the course of our video chat. And if you're not familiar with me, this is something that I've been doing for many years. Long time. I've been doing these live Q&As each week for years. And I've been around the fitness industry since the late 90s. I actually started my very first website back in 1997 and started coaching people back then. And my fitness journey has always, like my coaching, I should say, has always modeled my fitness journey. So back then when I was competing in bodybuilding myself, I was helping up-and-coming bodybuilders to get ready for competition. That was my main focus, and people who wanted to build their body, right? Bodybuilding. Not always competitive bodybuilders, even though I did have a lot of competitive bodybuilders that I worked with. A lot of people who just wanted to build a leaner, more muscular body. And now that I've kind of transitioned into beyond just bodybuilding, but more overall health and fitness. You know, now that I'm a father over 40, that's my main focus now, in helping other fathers who are going through similar challenges and working on getting rid of the dad bod, as they say. And the dad bod is real, right? I got a dad bod myself when I became a father. So if you're struggling with trying to lose the dad bod, I totally hear where you're coming from, because it is a real thing. You know, when you've got a career, a family, you're busy, you got responsibilities, and you're so preoccupied with taking care of everything else, very often we neglect our own health and fitness in the process. And that's where the whole muscle after 40 blueprint and this new movement towards getting fit over 40 really came about for me, because it was something that was a real struggle. And that's what I really primarily focus on now. Not saying that I don't offer advice to up-and-coming bodybuilders and people who are looking to bulk up and, you know, get stronger and focus on athletic performance, because, hey, I've been there and I certainly can relate to those goals as well. But my personal goals have changed. It's really on building a lean, healthy physique and doing so in a sustainable fashion for life, right? And building that comfortable, sustainable process, right? Where you don't feel like you're a slave and suffering it out on some crazy restrictive cutting diet, and you enjoy the process. You enjoy your life, and having fitness add to your life versus being the whole consuming factor taking up your entire life, which it can be when you go to the extremes, especially with bodybuilding, right? If you've ever competed in bodybuilding or know anybody who has, it's like tunnel vision, right? They got to put on the blinders, and while they're in contest prep mode, that's their top priority. Everything else gets pushed to the side. Like no family get-togethers, no cheat meals, no extracurricular activities, right? I got to focus on eat, sleep, train, repeat, the whole that type of mantra. And that works. Don't get me wrong. That absolutely works. But it's not a sustainable and enjoyable way to live your day-to-day life. And that's what we focus on now, is really having the sustainable long-term, enjoying the process. That's what it's all about. Not just simply suffering it out in the short term, hitting a short-term goal, and then now what, right? Going back to your old habits again, and very often undoing the progress you made. We want to be making slow, steady progress in the right direction while enjoying the process. So let's see who we got joining in. We have Louis joining in. I'm not sure if it's how you pronounce it. If it's Louis or Louis, saying just signing in. Thanks for sharing your time and knowledge with us. Another great podcast. I guess we could consider this like a podcast. I consider it a live video chat because I don't usually post it on podcast platforms, even though I probably should. I could certainly probably reach more people that way. So it's something I should be doing. I should be making this into a podcast and posting it on platforms. But it's the same idea. I mean, basically, it's a live stream. I mean, that's more or less what a podcast is a lot of times. So thanks for joining in, Louis, I should say. We have Dario joining in as well. All right, Dario's got a question there, which I will answer very shortly. We have Richard's joining in. Welcome, Richard. Richard's a member of our Muscle After 40 Blueprint program. Glad to have you tuning in. Awesome. So as you're jumping on, let me know, feel free to type into the chat window and introduce yourself. And again, if you do have any questions or topics that you would like to discuss, feel free to do so. This is your opportunity to ask questions and get them answered live. And if I can help you, I will. And if I can't, then I won't BS you or give you a false direction or anything like that. I'm totally upfront and honest here. If I can help you, then by all means I will. But if I can't, then I'll try and point you in the right direction to somebody who can. Because even though I've been doing this for over 30 years and fitness is a passion of mine, and this is my day-to-day, helping people achieve their fitness and fat loss, health and wellness goals, I don't claim to be a know-it-all. Right. So sometimes people will ask questions that are outside my area of expertise. And if that is the case, I have no shame in saying I don't know. So if there's something that I can help you with, by all means, I will. And if I can't, then I'll let you know that, and I'll try and point you in the right direction. All right. Let's see what else we got here. All right. We got some other people joining in. Awesome. We got Robert's regular to our chat. Welcome, Robert. Glad to have you joining in. All right, good. And Jesse saying, I'll leave and come back. My phone is having issues. Well, log out and log back in. But if you do miss anything, the replay will be posted up afterwards. But of course, it's always nice to participate live and actually participate in the conversation. And with that being said, for those of you who can't tune in live, and I know everybody's schedule changes, like it's cool. We got some people who tune in every single week, which is awesome. I respect your consistency and I respect your support. I mean, it's much appreciated. But I know a lot of people catch the replay of these. So if you do have any questions that you would like to have answered, you can send them in advance. And actually, I had somebody do that earlier today, and I'm going to address that right here. I posted up when I put the schedule up on YouTube, somebody commented, and I'm just going to share my screen here now to get that. Where is it? Get that question for us. All right, let's see. Is that coming through there? Oh, it's pretty tiny. I don't know if I can make that any bigger or not. Anyway, I'll read it out here. So this was posted when I put up the schedule earlier today on YouTube in the community tab. This one's from Sal. It says, Lee, I've been a big fan of yours for years. I'm 66 years old. I'm training hard and eating right, but I can't seem to gain any muscle size. I know people say you can build muscle up into your 80s, but does it get tougher in your 60s? Because nothing seems to grow even when I go to failure on all my exercises. All right, that is a loaded question. There's a lot to unpack with that. So we're going to jump right in, and that really fits into our muscle after 40 mindset that we have going on here. I mean, Sal's more than muscle after 40. We're into muscle after 60 with him. So I'm just going to make that, let's change that around there. Okay. Actually, I'm just going to there. Go back to this screen because it's such a small question there. I didn't want to take up the screen there with it. But in Sal's case, all right, 66 years old. He's training hard and consistent, but he can't gain any muscle size. Now, one thing I want to clarify, I would assume you've probably been training for a while. And the longer you train, regardless of age, but this also applies even more so the older you get, but the longer you've been in the fitness game, the slower your rate of progress is going to be. We make our fastest progress when we start a fitness and nutrition program. So if that's what's referred to as the newbie gains, you hear that term thrown around a lot in bodybuilding, and social media and all that. So you hear people talk about newbie gains, and it basically means the progress that somebody makes when they start a fitness program initially. Because at the beginning, anything that you do consistently is new stimulus, and your body's going to respond very well to that. And it doesn't even have to be a perfect program or a perfect eating plan. It just has to be good enough. And as long as it's good enough and good enough consistently, your body is going to respond. And it usually responds very favorably because it's unique stimulation. And that's when you'll see the most rapid progress. So, for example, if you have someone who's overweight and out of shape, they're not focusing on their nutrition, they're not doing any exercise, they've got some poor lifestyle habits. If they start cleaning all that up, start focusing on good quality nutrition and nourishing their body with high quality, high nutrient dense foods, they start exercising on a regular basis, they start focusing on optimizing their sleep, minimizing negative lifestyle habits like minimizing or eliminating alcohol consumption and processed foods and that kind of stuff, they're going to see a rapid change. It's almost miraculous how fast it can happen initially once you make those shifts. And I've seen some people, and I've talked to some people on our private Facebook group that we have, who really, started turned a new page in their life and really committed to this and made some amazing progress. And again, it's quite amazing how fast you can make progress when you do make these changes initially. And the good news is you can make positive changes a lot faster than it took for the negative changes to accumulate. Like, just put some real world numbers out there. Like, let's just say someone's 50 pounds overweight or more. Like, 50 pounds overweight is pretty, that's average these days. We see a lot of people who are 100 plus pounds overweight, but let's just say, you're in that range, right? You have to say 50 to 100 pounds overweight. That just didn't happen in a few weeks or a few months or even a few years. That's probably been creeping up for years and years and years, maybe decades even in some cases, right? You're probably gaining half a pound to a pound a month, just from poor habits, and it sneaks up on you ever so slowly. So after 1 year of poor fitness and nutrition, you probably put on 5 or 10 pounds. It's no big deal. I got a few extra pounds on. I'll worry about it later. Another year goes by, another 5, 10 pounds add up. Another year goes by, another year goes by, and before you know it, 10 years later, 50 pounds heavier or longer. I mean, next thing you know, it could be 100 pounds heavier. And it's like, where the heck did this come from? Right? It's not like you were purposely trying to get fat. Like, nobody goes out there with a mission like, oh, I'm going to try and get fat. I'm going to purposely eat all kinds of junk food. I'm going to purposely neglect my health. I'm going to try and get as fat as possible. No, like, nobody goes out there with that intention. But it's just through neglect that it slowly starts to accumulate. Now, if it takes 10 plus years to get out of shape, the good news is it doesn't take 10 plus years to get back in shape. You can undo the damage a lot faster when you do implement healthier lifestyle habits and eating and exercise habits and all that. So that's the good news, right? That's what's known as the newbie gains. So when you start an initial program or even come back to a program after a long layoff, the same principle applies. You'll see rapid results. But once you're consistent, and this is what I think is in the case of Sal, I just bring up his question again there. He was saying, I know it's really small there, but he was saying, I can't seem to gain any muscle size. And he's at his 60s and he's been training hard and eating right. So once you've been doing that for a while, what happens is your body is adapted to the approach that you're taking. And it starts to settle into, this is the new norm, right? This is now your new normal. And your body's always trying to achieve this status of homeostasis where it just maintains. That's what it's always trying to do. So to get yourself to make further progress outside of that norm, you really have to push yourself. And the older you get, the harder it is, because it's like walking a tightrope, like a razor's edge of, yes, you want to push yourself to make progress, but at the same time, your recovery is not the same as it used to be. The joints, tendons, and ligaments got a lot more wear and tear. You're more susceptible to injury. Your recovery is not the same, like especially when you look at someone, say, in their 20s or 30s, where their body is more in the prime and the recovery is faster, hormone levels are higher, less injuries, less aches and pains, less tendonitis or arthritis or whatever ailments you got going on. Less of that. So it makes it easier to stay consistent, makes it easier to train harder, makes it easier to make progress the younger you are. But that doesn't mean that you can't make progress in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. I mean, we've seen that. We've got guys in our Muscle After 40 Blueprint program who are in their 70s, still training hard and consistent and still making progress. But it's a slower rate, especially when it comes to gaining size, because you have a lot of things going against you. I mean, as you get older, your hormone levels start to decline. So testosterone levels start to go down, growth hormone starts to go down, all these metabolic and anabolic steroid hormones in the body start to decline. And that can have a negative impact on your recovery, negative impact on your ability to build new muscle, your ability to push yourself and to sustain that high output. All right. So that's one thing. What I would recommend in Sal's case is, first off, if you haven't already done so, it'd be a good idea to get a checkup and get your blood work done where you see what your hormone levels are. Now, you could obviously do this through your family doctor, or you could even go visit a hormone replacement specialist, an endocrinologist who deals with this specifically. And that would be a good move to get that checked, because if that is low, then that could be one of the weak links that's preventing you from maximizing your progress, right? So something to look into and see if there's ways that you can optimize your hormone levels. That can make a big difference. Another thing that you want to focus on as well is your nutrition, all right? That's a big one. And even though you say you're eating right, like I really like that's a very vague term. Like a lot of people say I eat right or I eat healthy, but what does that really mean? Right? What does eating right or eating healthy really mean? And one thing that you got to factor in as well is the older you get, your need for quality nutrition actually goes up. It doesn't go down. And I'll give you another example. Like your need for protein actually goes up. Like you need to consume more protein the older you get, because you have to combat all the issues that we're dealing with aging, the slower metabolism, lower hormone levels, lower protein synthesis. You actually need to combat that with consuming more protein, because a younger person whose metabolic and anabolic hormones and everything are at their optimal and at their peak, they can make the most of the food they eat. Like, so when they consume protein, their body's maximizing that protein and utilizing it for recovery and growth. Whereas the older you get, your digestive enzymes and metabolic hormones and all that are not at their peak. So you actually need to consume more to get the same benefits. And this is part of the reason why we see people get sarcopenia, which is basically muscle loss as they age. There's a couple reasons for that. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but one is their body is not as efficient at utilizing the food that it eats. All right. So, I mean, you actually need more protein the older you get. And what do we often see? We see the complete opposite. Like most people who, as they age, they tend not to focus on getting enough protein, right? They eat more comfort foods or food that tastes good. Like I give you an example. My dear old grandmother, God rest her soul, like she lived on bread and tea. Like breakfast was, right? She'd have a slice of bread and a cup of tea. Lunch was something similar. I mean, it might be a few biscuits or something and a cup of tea. Dinner was the only meat and potatoes type of meal where she would get some protein, a little bit of potato, a little bit of vegetable. But again, it wasn't big portions by no means. So she wasn't consuming or focusing on quality nutrition. And you could see as the years crept up, like she was getting weaker, she was getting smaller, she was losing weight, just you see that with a lot of older people. Like they're going catabolic, they're experiencing sarcopenia, where they're losing muscle the older they get. And part of it is lifestyle choices, where they're simply, in their mind, they're eating healthy because they're not eating a lot of junk food or processed foods, and they're not drinking alcohol or stuff like that, which, I mean, that's good, don't get me wrong, but they're not optimizing their nutrition. They're not focusing on nourishing their body, right? There's a big difference between nourishing your body and simply avoiding quote unquote bad food, right? So that's one thing I'd want you to prioritize, is actually look at nourishing your body. Like, are you getting at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day, right? Especially if your goal is muscle gain, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day for muscle gain. Now, for those of you who are trying to lose body fat, I would say 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So put some real numbers there. If you weigh 250 pounds and your goal is to get down to 200, shoot for 200 grams of protein, right? You don't need to eat a gram of protein per pound of body weight if a lot of those pounds are excess pounds that you're trying to lose. But you want to eat a gram per pound of ideal body weight, or in the case of someone who's trying to build muscle, at least 1 gram of protein per pound of your current body weight. That's a good benchmark, especially as you're older, because you need that extra protein in your system to combat all the negatives of aging and not being able to utilize the protein. Right? You need more of it. That's going to be challenging, right? That's going to be challenging to do through diet alone. So supplementing with protein powders can certainly help, right? That's a great way, an easy way to bump up your overall protein intake and help ensure that you're providing the raw materials that your body needs to maximize muscle growth. Another thing, you didn't really go into a lot of detail about your training program, but one thing I've noticed, and I've mentioned this in the past in several video chats, when it comes to building muscle, how you structure your workouts is very important. And one thing that I've always recommended, and I've noticed myself, is working out, say 3 days a week or every other day. Having a full day of rest in between workouts allows your body to rest, recover, and grow, so that when you hit the gym, you can give it 100% and not feel drained or depleted. Because building muscle is a different type of stimulus than simply trying to build endurance or sports performance or different types of things like that. Building muscle is a different mindset and a different process. You don't actually improve muscle growth in the gym. When you're in the gym, you're tearing the muscles down. You're breaking down muscle tissue. You're actually going catabolic. You're technically losing muscle when you're in the gym because you're breaking it down. It's in the rest, recovery, and growth that you get when you're away from the gym and you're resting and nourishing your body. That's when the actual growth takes place. So if you're one of these guys who say, like, I work out every day, you could literally be like shooting yourself in the foot and shortchanging your progress because you're not allowing that rest and recovery and growth in between those workouts. And I've been guilty of this, especially when I was younger. I was so full of piss and vinegar, and I wanted to try and maximize my progress. And I said, well, I'm going to work out every day, right? I'm going to speed up this process. I'm going to shortcut the process. I'm going to do it every single day. And I even got to the point where sometimes I was doing like twice a day. And there's a fine line. Like initially you might be able to make some progress like that, especially if you've been under training and you kind of go through that phase, but it quickly catches up to the point where now you're not allowing enough rest and recovery to actually optimize that growth. So I found that when I scaled it back to every other day, 3 days a week, I started to grow. So I made much better progress. And that's something that you want to look into as well. Another thing that stood out to me in Sal's question, where was it? Going to failure on all my exercises. Now, I respect the work consistency or the work effort, I should say, but failure is, you don't need to push yourself to failure on all exercises, right? You need to stimulate muscle growth. And there's a fine line here, because simply trying to lift heavier weight may not always be the best solution. Because if that leads to poor form or using momentum or not getting a good muscular contraction, then that can actually hinder your growth. Like, we're not powerlifting. We're not weightlifting. We're trying to stimulate muscle growth, trying to stimulate hypertrophy. And time under tension is critical here. And so there's it's kind of hard to explain it, but like it's a different mentality. Like, if someone who's training for power and athletic performance, like a power lifter or a weightlifter or strongman competitor, they're using their muscles and their body as a tool to move the weight. A bodybuilder who's focusing on hypertrophy is using the weights as a tool to build their body. Now, we're both lifting weights and we're both going to get bigger and stronger, but there's a reason why bodybuilders maximize muscle growth and hypertrophy, and weightlifters and powerlifters maximize their power output. Is because of how they're training. And you need to focus on training for hypertrophy. And when it comes to training to failure, you can do that in moderation. Like, I'm not saying it has to be every exercise or every set, but like, you can push yourself to momentary failure, but make sure that it's true muscular failure. And I want to define what that is, because a lot of people have mixed feedback when it comes to failure, what that is. True failure is the point at which you cannot complete another repetition with good form. It's not the point at which you can't move the weight at all. So I'll give you an analogy. Think of doing a bicep curl, right? Very common exercise. A lot of people do. The point of failure is when you can't complete another strict curl, right? When you get to the point and you're struggling, I can't complete another strict curl, that's failure. But if you start to use a little bit of momentum, heave and swing, you'll probably be able to complete some extra reps. That's going beyond failure. And once you start to go beyond failure by throwing in a bit of body English, momentum, cheating, swinging, whatever you want to call it, then the risk to reward is not in your favor. Now, and I know some old school programs are always preaching, the high intensity approach, and that can work to a certain degree. But again, as you get older, you have to respect your body more. So simply training to momentary muscular failure with good form is intense enough, because once you start breaking the muscle down, it's just digging you into a deeper rut. Like, all you want to do is stimulate the muscle, not annihilate the muscle. And that's a quote that former Mr. Olympia Lee Haney used to say. You want to stimulate, not annihilate. And when people are trying to really push it with high intensity, very often they get into that annihilation phase where they think more is better, harder, go bigger, go home. And it can actually be digging yourself into a rut. Sometimes backing off a little bit and just doing enough to get the job done is a better way of going about it, right? Like, that's the way you want to approach your workouts. Like, just do enough to get the job done without overkill, right? Like if you were a hunter, right, and you're hunting a deer, you could use a rifle or a bow and you could get the job done. That's enough to get the job done. You don't need to go in there with an RPG rocket launcher and blow the deer to smithereens. Right? That would kill the deer as well, but it's overkill. There wouldn't be nothing left to bring home afterwards. Right? So a lot of people are taking that overkill approach to their workouts, right? They're going in there and thinking, I got to push myself to failure. I got to do 4 steps. I got to do every exercise to failure. I got to train every day. And, they're digging themselves into a rut. You want to just do enough to get the job done, and then rest, recover, and grow, and let your body take care of the rest. Right? Another analogy I like to use, and I know this was one that I've heard, it's almost like, visualize if we're trying to get a suntan. I know summer's coming to an end here now, so we're not too many people probably getting suntans anymore. But if you're out trying to get a suntan, you just want to get enough sun stimulation to provide that's the stimulation to your skin so that it starts to get a tan. But if you put too much stimulation, like you're out in the sun all day, you get burnt. And then when you burn, you peel. So you actually don't build a tan. You just burn your skin and it peels, and it's not a pretty sight. Same applies when you're trying to stimulate muscle growth. You just want a little bit of stimulation to provide that, the training stimulus so that your body knows, okay, you're putting some stress on it. We got to grow bigger and stronger so we can handle this stress for the next workout. But you don't want to go in there and overkill it and do too much so that you're digging yourself into a rut and actually setting your progress back. So in Sal's case, a few things that you could look into is, 1, maximizing your nutrition, focusing on optimizing your protein intake and really focusing on nourishing your body, not just simply avoiding bad foods. And with your workouts, really look into how you're doing those exercises and stopping those sets short of muscular failure, or just at muscular failure when you can't complete another repetition with good form, and not going beyond that. And then also making sure that you're giving yourself a full day of rest in between each workout. And that should help to, encourage optimizing your muscle growth. Now, with that being said, there's probably a lot more variables. I mean, I'm just trying to pick apart a 3-line question here and give some advice. But Sal, if you are watching this, feel free to reach out, right? You can send me an email and we can discuss this more offline. Or if we're friends over on Facebook, you can drop me a message and we can kind of discuss this in more detail as well. But based on what you sent me, those are some tips and strategies I'd have right off the bat that you can start implementing. All right, let's see who else we got joining in and what other questions we've got coming through. Dario's got a question. This one kind of fits in nicely with what I was just talking about. What are your thoughts on Mike Mentzer's philosophy of training? I was a huge fan of Mike Mentzer. For those of you who don't know, Mike Mentzer was an old school bodybuilder, competed on the Olympia stage back in the 80s and maybe in the 70s. I can't remember exactly his whole contest history, but he's an old school bodybuilder. And he had a high intensity program that was very popular in the magazines called Heavy Duty. And he was one of the original advocates of high intensity training. Him, another guy, Arthur Jones, there was a few of them. And that was his philosophy, was, really pushing your body to failure and beyond to try and maximize muscle stimulation. Mike has since passed on, right? So, he's no longer with us. And I see a lot of guys, it's really starting to pop up on YouTube these days. Like, a lot of people have been sharing clippets of some of Mike's old video content, right? Like, I've just seen it in my feed. So chances are it's probably been popping up in your feed as well, if you're asking the question on it. And people have been sharing it. And I got to say, like, there's a lot of things I agree with, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that I don't agree with. And that's fine. I like Bruce Lee's philosophy on this. You take what's useful, you discard what's useless, and then you add what's uniquely yours, right? You don't need to absorb everything. And that applies for even what I'm sharing here. Like, if something that I'm sharing doesn't resonate or doesn't fit your exact situation, don't feel like, you have to change it just because Lee suggested it. If you got something that's working for you, keep doing it. Keep doing it. Even if it's a bit different than what I suggested, if it's working for you and you're seeing results and you enjoy it, then by all means, keep doing it. But if it's not working for you and you're not seeing results or you're not enjoying it, then, don't keep beating your head against the wall trying to do the same thing and expect different results. Be open to trying a different approach. And when it comes to Mike Mentzer's philosophy of this high intensity, I think he took the high intensity thing a bit overboard, because as I mentioned in the previous question there, like, we only need to stimulate muscle growth. We don't need to annihilate it. So pushing yourself to failure and beyond with forced reps and with negative repetitions and all this to really try and dig the muscle as deep into a hole as possible, I think that's overkill. Simply training to positive muscular failure is enough to stimulate the growth. And it's also powerful because that minimizes your risk of injury. And one of the biggest drawbacks with the high intensity style of training is injury. And virtually everybody that I know of who's followed that type of approach has the injuries to show for it, right? Torn muscles, joint and tendon and ligament issues. It's hard on the body. It really is. And especially as you get older, you need to respect your body more. And one thing that I've always preached, especially to my personal coaching students, is the most important thing with your workouts is injury prevention, because that's the only thing that is going to slow down your progress. Literally. Like, if you go in there and you do an easy workout, you don't train to failure, big deal. You can always train harder next time. Like, you can always improve upon what you did the next workout. So if you have an easy workout today, big deal. That's not going to slow your progress. If you skip a workout, in the greater scheme of things, big deal. Like, if you work out today or you don't, you're still going to look the same tomorrow. right? Like the one workout isn't going to make or break your success. It's the cumulative effects of multiple workouts over time. It's what you're doing most of the time that matters. So even if you skip a workout, big deal. But if you go in there and you do too much and you get injured, right? You strain something, you tear something, like you tear a rotator cuff or you tear a pec or, you injure your knees or you throw out your back or whatever, you're not bouncing back the next day, right? Like if you get injured, that's the only thing that can really set your progress back. So I'm a huge advocate of injury prevention and taking that preventative measure with your workouts. And this idea of pushing yourself to failure and beyond, yeah, you may maximize a little bit of muscle stimulation, but you also increase the risk of injury exponentially. And in my opinion, it's not worth it. I'd rather have a little less muscle. So instead of getting absolutely 100% muscle stimulation, like, hey, if I could get 9 out of 10, if I could get 90% muscle stimulation, but stay injury free and then be consistent, that's way the heck better than going in there and getting absolute 100% every single time. And then, a few months down the road, you got an injury and then you're set back and you're laid up trying to nurse an injury. Right? It's not worth it, in my opinion. So that's the biggest downside I have with Mike's philosophy. And there's a few things there. Like, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here on it, but some of his thoughts on volume and stuff like that, I don't truly agree with. Like he was saying, like 1 set to failure and beyond is all you need. Instead of doing that, I would much rather someone do 2 sets, to failure or just shy of failure. And I think you would probably get the same degree of muscle stimulation without risking the injury. Right. So there's a few things that I don't totally agree with, but hey, I mean, who am I to argue? I mean, people have followed Mike's program and have gotten great results, but at the same time, most people who've done it for any length of time has probably got the injuries to show for it. All right, let's see what else we got there. We have Emma joining in. Good to see you. Have you got any bodybuilding shows coming up, and how big are your biceps at the moment in competition shape? No, I'm not. I haven't competed since 2021 was the last time I competed, and that was a comeback after over a decade hiatus. I'm involved with the bodybuilding these days, but I'm the MC of the show. I'm not, so I'm on stage, but I'm not on stage in a posing suit. I'm on stage in a suit and tie and emceeing the show. That's how I participate in our local competitions these days. Yeah. But no, I have no intentions of going back anytime soon. I mean, I'll never say never, but it's not my main priority. At this stage, I've actually kind of switched sports. I mean, I still go to the gym and I work out in the gym 2 to 3 days a week, but my main athletic goal now is cycling. So I've been doing a lot of that recently. And I've since competed in 5 road cycling races. I've done 3 this year. I did a couple last year. And that's been a lot of fun. It's a new challenge for me. And I just like that variety. And it's something that's been... It's totally, chalk and cheese from bodybuilding, but I like that unique new challenge, of taking on something new, and it's been a lot of fun. And so that's what I'm doing now. Is my main sport is cycling and competing in some of our local amateur races that we have. All right, let's see what else we got. Jeffrey is joining in. Welcome, Jeffrey. Says, I'm down 40 pounds since May. Wow, that's awesome. Staying focused and disciplined with sustainable diet and exercise. Man, that is very impressive. And he says, at 54 years young. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And again, it just goes to show, what's possible if you put in the work and you trust the process. I mean, that is amazing. 40 pounds since May. Focused, discipline, and sustainable diet and exercise. So, I mean, for those of you who are thinking, hey, I'm in my 40s. Am I too old? I'm in my 50s. Am I too old? Whatever. Hey, Jeffrey's 54 and he's making it work. That's right. So yeah, kudos to you, man. That's awesome. Round of applause. And if I had a hat, I would tip it to you. Thanks for sharing. Philippe is joining in. Says hello from Chicago. He says, Lee, I'm looking to bulk up and add a few pounds of muscle. Currently going to the gym 3 times a week, doing full body workouts. The day after the gym, I usually do walking for cardio. I can't do high impact exercises due to knee osteoarthritis. What are your thoughts about rucking for cardio and adding muscle? All right, that's an interesting one. I've never really done rucking myself, not intentionally. I mean, everybody has kind of unintentionally rucked, and for those of you who are wondering, like, what do I mean by rucking? It's basically taken from the military, where they take a loaded pack sack and walk with it. You go hiking with a loaded pack on. So maybe, obviously, you start off light and build it up in a progressive overload fashion, but eventually, I mean, you could have 50 plus pounds strapped to your back, whether it's a backpack or a weighted vest or whatever, and you just go for a hike. And the added weight, helps to make that workout that much harder. Because, I mean, the more weight you're carrying, the harder you got to work. I've never ever done that myself as a structured part of my workout program. So as far as adding muscle with it, I mean, I don't think it's going to hurt. I mean, it's certainly going to increase your work capacity. It can help increase your stamina. But as far as, is it necessary to build muscle? No. I mean, like, you look at most people who are the most muscular, i.e. bodybuilders and athletes like that, I would be willing to bet the majority of them built their physiques without rucking. Now, again, I'm not knocking it or saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's certainly not necessary. But this is what I would suggest is, if you're interested in it, try it and see how you like it. See how it works for you. See if that allows you to, do some higher intensity cardio without stressing your knees. Because, again, you got to factor that in there too. Like, when you're walking, hiking, and you have extra weight on, that's also extra stress on the knees. So that's something to consider as well. But, it'd be worth trying. Like, start off small, take a small pack first, and just get used to it. And then week by week, add a little bit of weight to it, in a progressive overload fashion, just like you would when you're starting a brand new exercise in the gym, and just see how it works for you and try it. I mean, it's certainly, unless it causes aches and pains to your knees, from adding that extra weight, I don't think it's going to have any negative impact. So that's why I recommend just listen to your body and take this in a progressive fashion. But it could certainly make your cardio, if you're doing walking for cardio, as you mentioned. I can just bring up his question again. All right. I kind of wanted to get the question out of the way because it kind of hides my face there. But you're saying you're usually do walking for cardio. Adding a weighted pack and going for those walks is certainly going to increase the intensity of that cardio, because you're forcing your body to perform a higher level of work capacity. So give it a try, and if it works for you, keep it up. If you don't like it or you find it's not effective, then hey, go back to your current non-weighted walking workouts. Right? But again, that's something I really don't have any personal experience with of doing it consistently. Right? The only time I've ever rocked is like if we're going camping or something and you got your gear loaded up or whatever, but it wasn't a consistent day in, day out type of exercise routine. It was kind of like a one-off thing. So obviously you're not going to get any significant stimulation or results from doing something one-off. It has to be done consistently day in, day out. Or not necessarily every day, but you know what I mean? Like consistently, on a regular basis. That's what I'm getting at. Dad Physique says Facebook wasn't working, so I'm trying YouTube. That's interesting. We have some people tuning in through Facebook right now. I'm just seeing the stats here. Obviously, most people are joining in from YouTube, but we do have people joining in from Facebook as well. But hey, however you're here, that's the main thing. All right, glad to have you joining in. Neil is joining in. He says, just want to try something new. So I tried working out in the morning, but without any sort of pre-workout and intense music, and the session is incredibly boring. I mean, I wasn't able to lift hard, but why? That's an interesting question, and there's a lot of things we could unpack there. If you're normally not a morning person, it could be hard to muster up that kind of energy in the morning. Like some people are morning people and they love, getting up before everybody else, up before the sun, and, getting their day started. And then they just makes them feel productive and almost like, hey, I got a head start on the rest of the world, right? Like then they thrive off that. I'm normally not a morning person, but over the last couple of years with my cycling training, I do a lot of early morning rides, because it's a great time to get out before the traffic hits and everything else, to get out there when the roads are quiet. It's just an awesome time. So I've kind of made myself into a morning person and took advantage of that. And I find I get some great cardio workouts in early morning, but it wasn't always that way. I was more of a night owl beforehand. Before I got involved with cycling and that, I was more of a night owl, and I tend to work out later in the evening. So it might take a while to adapt to it. If you're normally used to working out in the evening and you just one-off tried it in the morning, don't expect that to be just like, oh, wow, this is awesome. It's probably going to take a while for your body to adjust if that is something that you want to do. Now, with that being said, regardless of when you work out, you can still make progress, right? If you work out morning, noon, or night, like we can make an argument for any time. I mean, the most important thing is that you get your workouts done, right? Regardless of when it is, right? I know guys who've morning workouts and made amazing results. I know guys who've been lunch hour workouts, made amazing results. I know guys who are after work, or guys who are even late in the night into the evenings. As long as you're consistent, you can still make it work, right? So don't go getting hung up on, oh, what's the best time? Like the best time is the best time for you, right? That's the bottom line. But with that being said, if you want to try changing things up within your schedule or whatever, you can certainly try doing morning workouts. But there's a couple things you mentioned there as well. You didn't have your pre-workout, and you didn't have any intense music. If you normally have a pre-workout later in the day, that's going to be a big thing. Like if you're trying to do a morning workout with no caffeine in your system, you're not caffeinated and motivated, that's going to have an impact. If you normally like to work out to intense music and now you're in the morning and you're doing it to no music, just listening to the birds chirp, that's not going to be quite as motivating either. So, maybe you want to try bringing back the pre-workout and the music. I mean, that could be some anchors to get you into that zone for a good workout, if that helps you. All right. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack there, but bottom line, just because you had one not so good morning workout or it was boring doesn't mean you want to, you just want to scrap it entirely. If this is a convenient time for you and it's something that you want to start to implement and kind of build that habit of a morning routine, just stick with it, and you probably will start to adapt and enjoy it more. One thing that I will say about workout times, even though you can make progress regardless if it's morning, noon, or night, I have seen from my own personal coaching students and people that I've worked with, those that do their workouts early in the morning, and it's kind of like their primary focus early in the day, they tend to be the most consistent. Because when you get up and your main focus is on getting that workout done, whether it's going to the gym or you got a home gym or however you structure it, however you want to do it, if you get it done first thing in the morning and that's your only priority right off the bat, then it's done. It's checked off the to-do list, and there's nothing else that can distract you from that, regardless of what happens that day, regardless of how busy you get at work, regardless of how many chores and errands you got at home, regardless if the excrement hits the fan later in the day, nothing's going to derail that workout because it's already done, right? It's done. It's in the bank. It's checked off the list. Boom. So it's really good for consistency. Whereas people who wait till later in the day, you open up the door for a lot of potential distractions, right? So you could get, something could happen, like you get extra busy at work, or something happens at home, or you got extra responsibilities or chores, or you want to run to the gym and the wife says, oh no, we need this and this and this at the grocery store, go get that, or whatever. Like you could get derailed by a whole bunch of distractions later in the day. Whereas if you get up early and you get the workout done and crossed off the list before you deal with the rest of the world, it's very good from a consistency point of view. And it might help to set that momentum for your day, where you're building that positive momentum. Like the first thing you did today was you had some good quality me time, good quality exercise time for yourself. And then regardless of what else happens throughout the day, that's done. You're not going to be distracted, or you're not going to procrastinate. And another thing we got to factor in as well is our willpower is generally the highest early in the day. As you get into the later day, as fatigue starts to accumulate, your willpower starts to go down as well. That's why if you're always waiting until in the evening to do your workouts, unless you're really motivated, it's easy to say, oh, I'm too tired. I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll start again on Monday, right? I'm tired. I'll rest. I won't blah, blah, blah. It's easy to brush it off if you're waiting till the evenings. Whereas if you do it first thing in the morning, it's done. And I find that from a consistency point of view, you can't beat it. So that's one plus for the early morning workout, right? Is that. So again, going back to what I said before, it's not that one time is necessarily right or wrong, or you can't make it work. It's what works the best for you. And I just know from a lot of my coaching students, and even with my own personal experience, I find that the morning workout does have that advantage over the workouts that are done later in the day. All right, Jeffrey is saying, thank you for your help and your guidance. And again, he's the guy who said he lost 54 pounds, 40 pounds since May, and he's 54 years old. I'm getting my numbers mixed up there. But again, you're more than welcome. And again, thanks for sharing. That's an amazing accomplishment. David is joining us. He says, hello, Lee. So here is a question. How long can a person age 50 expect to drop their body fat levels from 30% to 18%, adhering to nutritional guidelines during fat loss journey? Well, I can just bounce back to Jeffrey's question there. He lost 40 pounds since May. So we have May, June, July, August, September. He's been losing 10 pounds a month. Now that's aggressive fat loss. That's a lot, but obviously it's possible. So you can kind of use that as the standard. But you know what? I want to unpack this question even further, because who cares how long it takes? Like a lot of people have this mindset of, when I start my diet, like when I eventually get around to starting that diet and starting that exercise program and everything else, I got to lose it as fast as possible, right? Like I can go years or decades neglecting my health and fitness, and who cares? But once I start, I got to lose it as fast as possible, right? I got to lose it in 3 months, or I got to lose it in whatever. I got to 12 weeks, blah, blah, blah. I got to have this amazing 90-day transformation to show for it. And, not saying that you can't lose fast quickly if you really, go all in, but you have to take it from this sustainable approach and think like, how are you going to sustain this as a lifestyle? And you have to be able to enjoy the process, because suffering it out in the short term, even though it can produce faster results, if you don't enjoy it, and if you can't sustain it, and you're really running on willpower, and it's like, I can't wait for this diet to be over because I'm starving all the time, and I'm hangry, and I'm irritable, and I'm feeling exhausted, and my work life is suffering, my family life is suffering, and everything is suffering, but I'm losing weight. Like that's not sustainable. That's not enjoyable. And it's only a matter of time before, in a moment of weakness, you're going to give in and say, screw this, and start, binge eat and go back to your old habits. And that's where the whole yo-yo diet syndrome comes in. Right? People go hardcore right from the get-go, like the typical New Year's resolution, right? January, the gyms are going to be packed, and everybody's hoping to lose all their excess fat in the month of January, right? I'm going to work out twice a day. I'm going to eat 500 calories a day. I'm going to starve myself and work out like a madman and get myself in shape. And yeah, you do that for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you get burnt out and fed up and hangry and irritable, and you say, oh, screw this, it ain't worth it. And then you go back to your old habits again. I would much rather you take a slow, steady approach and enjoy the process, and then have the weight you lose be the weight you keep off, right? Not this up and down yo-yo, starve and binge cycle, which so many people go through. And I'm speaking from experience, because that's exactly what I did when I was competing in bodybuilding, going through that starve and binge, right? In the months leading up to a bodybuilding contest, like I would be literally the low carb, boiled chicken and broccoli, 2 hours of cardio a day, 6 days a week in the gym, just kind of burn the candle at both ends to try and just deplete, deprive, and starve the fat off. And yeah, it works. Like, don't get me wrong. If you're willing to suffer it out on boiled chicken and broccoli and spend 2 hours doing cardio plus, another hour or two weight training, and you do that every single day, yeah, you're going to lose a ton of weight pretty darn quick. But do you enjoy that? Probably not. It becomes all consuming, and it's just a burden. It's not a fun process. And it got to the point when I'd be going through these contest cutting diets, is like I'd be counting down the days till the contest, and I'd be like, man, I can't wait for this to be over so I can go back to normal again. Eat all the crap that I've been craving in the months of dieting. And as soon as the contest was over, I'd be like, okay, where's the all-you-can-eat buffet? Where's the pizza place? Where's the bakery? Where's the ice cream shop? And I'd start eating all the crap that I've been depriving myself of. Months of dieting to lose the weight, only a couple of weeks of eating crap to gain it all back. And then I'd be back to square one, fatter than ever, and trying to justify it by telling everybody, well, I'm bulking up now because it's the off season, trying to get bigger for next year's competition. Meanwhile, I wasn't bulking up. I was just getting fat because I couldn't control my appetite. And I was binge eating, right? But I couldn't say that. As a bodybuilder, I had to come up with a proper sounding excuse. So I'd say I'm bulking up, right? And that justified the rapid weight gain. Of course, I wouldn't be going around, I make sure that I kept myself well covered up in hoodies and sweatshirts and everything else so people couldn't see, or I hope people couldn't see how fat I was getting underneath. Right. So, I mean, it's a vicious cycle. So my advice to you, David, is who cares how long it takes, as long as you're making progress. Like, to really put things in perspective, like, even if you lost 1 pound a month, I know that sounds so ridiculously slow, and most people would consider themselves a massive failure if they lost a pound a month. But if you lost 1 pound a month and you enjoyed the process and you could sustain it and keep with it, just think what would happen over the next, 3, 5, 10 years. Like, that's how people get fat. And look how successful the Get Fat program is. Like, go out in public and look at your friends, family, and neighbors and coworkers. I mean, a lot of people are very successful on the Get Fat program. And the Get Fat program happens slow. They probably gain a pound a month or less, but they keep gaining it month after month, year after year, and it accumulates, and they build that sustainability into their Get Fat program, which is probably not an intentional program, but it works. And then 5-10 years later, they're like, how the hell where'd this 50 pounds come from? Right? I'm a fat slob. Who's that fat guy looking back at me in the mirror? Imagine if we could just reverse that, and you had a system in place where you could lose 1 pound a month. I mean, I know it sounds so ridiculously slow, and anybody who's going on a diet would consider themselves a massive failure if they only lost a pound a month. But if you did that for a year, you're down 12 pounds. You do it 2 years, you're down 24, right? And you do it for 5 years, 10 years. Like, you could literally, over the course of 10 years, you could lose 100 pounds if you only lost a pound a month. I mean, that's life-changing. That's amazing progress. And if you can do it so slow and without suffering or killing yourself or going on these crash diets, and just do so in a sustainable, enjoyable fashion, that's the secret to sustainability. And for full transparency, when I was going through my whole muscle after 40 transformation to lose my dad bod, that's what I was doing. On average, I was losing about a pound a month. Right? I know most people, again, look at it and say, well, dude, like, I haven't got time to wait that long or whatever, and think that's not worth it, blah, blah. But it compounds. It compounds week after week, month after month, year after year, and it compounds. And if you can sustain it without feeling like you're on a diet and have this become a new lifestyle shift, then that's the power. Because, like, anybody can suffer and deprive and grit their teeth through willpower and lose weight in the short term. But do you want to grit your teeth and rely on willpower and suffering it out for the rest of your life? Probably not. You want to have some pleasure and enjoyment in there. So if you can do it slowly and enjoy the process, that's the secret right there. It really is. Now, with that being said, if you're overweight now, like you're at 30% body fat, which, puts you in the overweight / obese category, you can lose fat faster than a pound a month and still do so without suffering it out, right? But I'm just sharing like how I went about it. You know, it took me like initially I was losing fat. Like I was probably losing 2 to 3 pounds a month initially. And then as I progressed further, it slowed down to about a pound a month. And then I just kept going. But then I've been able to just maintain that lean, healthy weight and enjoy the process. And, you know, that's the secret to sustainability. Anyway, moving on. Hopefully. And David, if I know you're messaging me through, or you're posting this through Facebook, if you have any questions or you want some help, you know, to brainstorm and strategize a nutrition plan to help you with that, feel free to send me a message through Messenger. If we're not friends already on Facebook, which, you know, friend me up and then drop me a Facebook message and we can have a chat through this. Let's see what else we got. Emma's got a question saying, what are the best exercises for making the biceps look really aesthetic, depending on whether you have long or short head biceps? Do the short head biceps always look better? I literally wrote the book on this. It's called Blast Your Biceps. It's an old school book. Well, old school by today's internet standards. It's still online. So let me dig it up there for you. Where are we to here now? I'm going to dig that up. I'm going to share my screen with you. Just a second here now. Bear with me. All right, that should be popping up there. The Blast Your Biceps program, yeah. So this is a, oh my God, when did I write this? It was back in the mid-2000s, somewhere around there. I can't remember exactly when, but this was a program that I wrote. And because the arms, specifically the biceps, were always a stubborn body part for me. Like I genetically do not have big arms. My chest, my back, my legs all responded a lot faster than my arms did. So I actually put together this program, Blast Your Biceps, and it's a specialization program to help prioritize the biceps and the triceps. Now, it's called Blast Your Biceps because I like the alliteration, you know, blast your biceps, but it's actually a full arm specialization program. So biceps, triceps, and forearms. And the key principle is we prioritize the biceps while we put our stronger body parts in basically a maintenance training mode. And it's broken down into a 3-phase system. So if you're interested in checking this out, right, you can go download a copy of this. Is a digital PDF ebook, and it's over on blastyourbiceps.com. And it's a $17 download, and it comes with a whole bunch of bonuses. So there's the Blast Your Biceps program itself. Then there's a quick start guide, a nutrition guide, supplement guide, workout tracker. So you can download that over on blastyourbiceps.com. That's a program that I had years ago. I mean, a lot of people followed that and got some amazing results with it. But that's still available, still up on my website. And it does come with where is it to? A money-back guarantee. If you're not happy for any reason, right, you can get a full refund. Right? A 60-day, no questions, ironclad money-back guarantee. Right? Got to play with words there. But anyway, yeah, check it out. Stop screen share. But that's what I would recommend, because that would be the way I'll give you an overview of how it works. As I mentioned, it's a prioritization program where you put the biceps, we basically are going to prioritize the biceps, train them twice a week, and put the stronger body parts, so the chest, back, legs, we're going to train those muscle groups once a week. And then there's 2 different workouts. One is a higher volume, more time under tension, and the other one's a heavier, more power-oriented training program. So different styles of training to help maximize the fast twitch and the slow twitch muscle fibers, and to really spur on maximum hypertrophy in the biceps and the triceps. So again, if you want to check that out, I think that would be a good one. That's what I followed myself. I mean, this was like the main priority that I was doing back in my bodybuilding competition day, to help bring up my arms so that they weren't a weakness, right? Because they were my weakest body part. Like if you look at some of my old bodybuilding pictures and that, like I had spaghetti noodle arms back in the day, and this really helped to fill them out. So that's what I would recommend. As for your question there about the long or short heads, generally speaking, someone who has longer bicep heads will have a bigger, flatter bicep. Someone who has a shorter head tends to have a higher peak. And that just has to do with the tendon insertions. So regardless of how you train or how big you build your biceps, you can't change the tendon insertions. So someone who has longer bicep heads, you can still build them bigger, but they won't have that same baseball peak, if you will, as someone with a shorter tendon insertion, right? So a lot of that has to do with genetics. And there's I'll show you a prime example of this. Let me just see if I can find it here now. If I go to, I'm just doing a search here now for Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sergio Oliva biceps. Let's see if I can find it. I've used, here it is. Or wait, no, this is a better one. No, that's pretty good. Okay, hang on. I'm going to just do a screen share here again. Screen share. Where's it to? Screen share. Here. Let's see if this comes through. This, I'll just move your question down so I can see this better. And make that a little bigger if I can. The picture's still a wee bit small, but Sergio has a longer, flatter bicep, and Arnold has a shorter, tendon insertion, so he has a higher peak. Both of these guys are former Mr. Olympias. Both of them are maximize their genetic potential. Like both of them done virtually every bicep exercise there is. Like we're talking about guys who have maximized their potential here. But you can see Arnold has a higher peak bicep than Sergio, and it really has to do with the genetic structure. So the shorter, higher peak biceps versus the longer, flatter peak bicep. Right? And again, if there's nothing you can do to change that, right? There's no special exercise that's going to change or whatever. That's just your God-given genetics. But regardless of your genetics, improvement is always possible. So again, if you're looking for a good program to help you with improving your biceps, I would recommend Blast Your Biceps. And I'm just going to type that link into our video chat there. You could type in blastyourbiceps.com, or you could just head on over to the link I post here below. I have both domain names. I have blastyourbiceps.org and I have blastyourbiceps.com. The one that just got posted there, I think, is the .org one, but it's the same thing. Both of them redirect to the same page. Blast Your Biceps. All right, check it out. All right, where else was I? I lost my place in the chat there. That was Emma's question about biceps. Thomas has got a question. It says, Lee, some people that have been weight training their whole life don't hit their prime until they're in their 40s. Smart training is a great experience. That is so true. It really is. And you see that more and more these days. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it, I guess. But like our perception of age has changed too. Like generations ago, if somebody was in their 40s, like they were over the hill. Like they were old. Like even when I was a kid, I remember looking at people in their 40s and saying, oh, they're old, right? That when I was in my teens and early 20s, the thought of someone being in their 40s or beyond, like, oh man, they're old people. Like they got gray hair and everything. They're old. Now that I'm in my 40s myself, I'm like, 40 ain't old. Heck no. Right? So I think our perception is changing as well. And like people are a lot of times are even picking up stuff later in life. Like prime example, I got serious into cycling in my 40s. Now, I always rode a bike ever since I was a kid and I never stopped, but there's a difference between riding a bike and competing and actually, being serious about it. So, I mean, I've really stepped that up in my 40s, and you see that in so many areas. Like a lot of times people starting to work out in their 40s or 50s or even older. Like I've got several of my coaching students, like one guy, Mike Brown, he didn't start lifting weights till he was 56. And now he's going to be 60 and he's on his birthday and he's in the best shape of his life, right? Started in his 50s. You see this more and more where guys are starting later and still making great progress in their 40s, 50s, and beyond. But even in the bodybuilding world, like it's rare for people to turn pro at a young age anymore. Like it takes that long to really maximize the development and to get that muscle maturity. Like back in the old days, like people were turning pro in their early 20s. Some guys even turn pros in their teens, which is insane. Think about it. But nowadays, like that's pretty much unheard of. Most guys who are becoming pro bodybuilders are doing so in their 30s. A lot of them are even in their 40s and beyond, like in that age range, turning pro, because it takes that long to really maximize their genetic potential. And of course, they're able to stay in the game longer, with a different mindset on training and lifestyle and nutrition. It's a different game. And it's a good thing. Like you hear a lot of people say like 50 is the new 30, and I kind of think it is, right? It gives us hope for sure. Oh, excuse me. God bless. All right, what else we got there? Dan's got a question. I think this is a follow-up. Emma, great triceps help make your biceps look more developed and balances out the arm. Absolutely. That's so true. Like when we're looking at the mass of the upper arm, the triceps, 3 muscles, versus the biceps, 2 muscles, the triceps are bigger. There's more mass in your upper arm in the triceps. It's probably about a 60-40 mass percentage ratio, right? So the majority of your upper arm is the triceps. So if you're trying to stretch the tape measure and make your arms look bigger and more muscular, you can't neglect the triceps, right? You need to fill out those triceps. And again, that will also help balance out the biceps. So you're working agonist and antagonist muscle groups. And again, that's all outlined in the Blast Your Biceps program. And that's also how we structure them too. Like we do a bicep exercise and a tricep exercise. So you're working them back to back. All right. Sal's joining in. I actually answered Sal's question earlier on. He's joining in live, and he also sent in his question early on. So he's making sure he's getting it done. He says, Sal here, thanks for answering my question about working out after 60. Great info. I'll keep trying using your advice. All the best. You the man. Well, you're welcome, Sal. Glad to help. And again, if you want to follow up, or if there's anything I neglected, or you want some more clarification on anything that I covered, feel free to reach out to me. Either friend me up over on Facebook and we can chat through Messenger, or you can drop me an email and we can chat through that as well. And I got my contact info down in the description below this video. Josen is joining in. I think that's how I say your name. It says, hi, Lee. My 3-day split is okay. Is my 3-day split okay? Day 1, chest and shoulders, core. Day 2, legs and calves. Day 3, back and arms, core. What do you think? If you're consistent with it, if it's working for you, you enjoy it, absolutely. It's not the workout split. Like there's no magic workout split. Like a lot of people think, like, should I do a bro split? Should I do upper lower split? Should I do a push pull leg split? And this is basically a push legs pull split. That's more or less what you have there. I mean, it's just the way you manipulate it, because chest and shoulders are the push, legs are the legs, obviously, and the back and the arms are primarily pulling. So you got a push, legs, pull. That's fine, right? Like the split, or how you break up your body parts and what order and all that, that's not what's the most important thing. What's the most important thing is what you're actually doing in the gym and how consistent you are with all the bigger picture. And you need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. So how consistent are you with your training? Are you training in a progressive overload fashion? Are you training hard enough to actually stimulate muscle growth? Are you providing adequate rest and recovery in between those workouts to allow for optimal growth? Are you getting adequate sleep? Are you living a healthy lifestyle in terms of minimizing negative habits and maximizing positive habits, like, avoiding alcohol and drugs and things that are obvious not good for your health, and maximizing good quality things like rest and relaxation and adequate sleep? And like, it's the big picture. Like, you could have the perfect workout program on paper, written by God himself, right? Here's the customized super duper program for you. But if your nutrition sucks, you're not getting enough sleep, and you're stressed out of your mind and everything else, it ain't going to work, right? Vice versa. You could have a simple little 3-day per week total body workout, the bare bones basic beginner's plan. And if you follow that and you're training in a progressive overload fashion and your nutrition is spot on and your sleep habits and lifestyle habits are spot on, you can make amazing progress. So it ain't the split, right? It's all the other variables and the smaller details that go into it. But again, to answer your question, I mean, a push-pull leg split, that's fine. A lot of people do that. I mean, that's a classic bodybuilding split program that's worked for millions of people. So, I mean, if you enjoy it, it fits your schedule, keep doing it, right? But again, focus on the bigger picture, right? That's what's going to determine your success, not just the, what day do I work each muscle group? Right? Because, I mean, you can vary that. Like in my case, I like total body workouts. I've mentioned this a gazillion times and I've posted videos about it. But for the last 7 years, I've been doing total body and it works and I enjoy it. So, it's not the split, right? It's basically, it's all the other details that go into the split. We have Dan. I use the same hoisin. Did I miss something? I don't know. Maybe I did. I don't know what. I use the same hoisin. Hassan? Anyway. Okay. I'm stumped. Dan, if you want to follow up on that, feel free to do so. All right. What else we got there? Art's joining in. Hi, Art. How you doing, buddy? Art's a regular to our video chats. We've got Frank joining in. Say, Lee, I often think about that. I would like to compete in bodybuilding one day, but always say to myself that I should become better first. But that also makes it so I never take that action. Thanks. I'm going to talk about this because a lot of what Frank just acknowledged there, and I appreciate you for being open and sharing that. It's a very common thing. A lot of people self-sabotage because I want to be perfect before I compete, right? Having this unrealistic expectation. Whereas the best way to learn is to just get out there and do it. And for very few exceptions, most people are going to suck for their first show, or at least not be at their best. Let's say that. I know saying you suck is a hard word. Most people are not going to be at their best. That's a nicer way to put it, for their first show. Some people go out and knock it out of the park. Like I've known some guys who went out there and won their first show, and they're usually genetically far superior than average. They've probably been training for years, and they have a very big muscular physique. Probably have years of training, and then once they diet down, they end up going out there and crush like a local level competition. But the crazy thing is, everybody's going to meet their match. So like you might go out there, and even if you do crush it at the local level, you move up to the regional level, chances are you're going to get your ass kicked. Or even if you crush it at the regional level, you go up to the national level, you're going to get your ass kicked. Or if you go to the pro level, like everybody's going to meet their match sooner or later. And the thing is, just do it. Just do it. Like, focus on doing it for yourself and learning from the process. And then your first competition, the goal is just to step on stage and compete, right? That's it. And then focus on improving for your next competition thereafter. And I've done the same thing when I started cycling racing. Like, I remember my first race, I placed dead last because and I knew it. Like, I knew the caliber of people I was up against, and I knew the conditioning that I was in, but I didn't care. I said, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway and learn from the experience. So I went out there, placed dead last, but I had a fun. I mean, it was a challenge. I mean, even just to finish the darn race was a challenge in and of itself, because I mean, it was over 100-kilometer bike race. So just the fact of finishing it was a victory, and I felt like a winner just crossing the finish line. Right? Like a lot of people who have a goal of running a marathon, like regardless of where you place, is just finishing a marathon is a huge feat of accomplishment in and of itself. So I took that same approach with my first bicycle race. For the next bicycle race, I actually won. I won my division, right? Now there was different categories, right? So I was in the B category, right? It wasn't in the elite A category group, but I was in the B category, which, is the weekend warrior category. But I actually won, and that's the category that I compete against, is in that weekend warrior division. And I'm after winning a couple. Actually, I've won 3 bike races in the weekend warrior category. And I actually competed in a relay for a triathlon where I did the cycling portion, and our team got second in the relay as well. So I was pretty pumped about that, But my first one out, I placed dead last, and I was totally cool with that, right? Because I went out there and learned so much. I learned from the mistakes that I made, and I learned from just being around the other people and chatting and the camaraderie and interaction. Just when it comes to your first time doing anything, just give yourself permission to go out there and do it. So whether you want to compete in a bodybuilding competition, or you want to run a race, or some sort of other competition, whatever that may be, just get out there and do it. Like just don't have any expectations other than I'm going to show up and give it my best and learn from the experience. And then the goal is to improve for your next competition. Like that's the fastest way to go about it, versus having this mental block of saying, I'm not good enough yet. I want to wait till I'm better, because you're never going to be good enough, right? There's always going to be somebody better than you, and vice versa. There's always going to be somebody worse than you, right? We're always going to be in the middle, right? Regardless, we're always going to be in the middle, unless you're, some super rare extremity, Like I'll give you an example, like Ronnie Coleman at his best was arguably like the most muscular bodybuilder to ever grace the bodybuilding stage. And, so when he was at his best, 8 Mr. Olympias and stuff, he was at the top, right? He wasn't in the middle. He was at the top. And then you could have somebody who has maybe a genetic disorder. They could be at the bottom. But most of us, most mere mortals, we're in the middle. There's always going to be someone better. There's always going to be somebody worse in most cases. So that applies regardless. Like you could compete at the local level. There's going to be somebody better. There's going to be somebody worse. You can move up to the nationals. There's going to be somebody better. There's going to be somebody worse. We're always in the middle. So thinking that I'm not good enough compared to what? Because regardless how good you get, there's going to be somebody who's better. All right. So just do it, and do it for yourself. Like you are the competition, being better than you were before. That's what this is all about. Right. So, again, hopefully this gives you the motivation or the inspiration to just take on that challenge and learn from it. And you know what? Try it. If you enjoy it and something you want to pursue, then hey, this might be a nice passionate hobby, or who knows how far you can go with it, but go for it. And then at the same time, you might do it and say, you know what? It wasn't what I expected. This isn't for me. And you might want to pursue some other athletic endeavor, but to go out there and try it anyway, cross it off the list, cross it off the bucket list, and then you'll have that experience that you can then move forward with. All right, moving on. Let's see. Holy crap, we're an hour and 22 minutes in. I got the gift of gab tonight. Mick is saying, what would you recommend as a good protein source in terms of whole food, not supplements? Meat, fish, chicken, eggs, dairy, animal protein are my favorite. Those types of protein sources, because they are complete sources of protein. They have all the essential amino acids that your body needs. So the animal sources, chicken, fish, eggs, dairy, those are probably my primary ones. I do have red meat, but it's not as often as the other. So I'll probably have red meat a couple times a week. But the chicken, fish, eggs, dairy, that could be sometimes even daily. Well, because I find they're easier to digest and absorb, and they don't sit as heavy on my stomach. Like I find a chicken breast, I can break it down, eat it, and digest it, and not have it sit on my stomach as much as like a steak. I find steak, red meat, sometimes takes a little longer to break down and digest. So if I am going to eat it, I usually have it for my later meals, like my evening meal, which tends to be like my biggest meal. And then in the evening, I usually just rest and digest. So it has lots of time to break down. But I find like earlier in the day, eggs, egg whites. I usually use a combination of both. Chicken, protein powders. I know you're asking for nut supplements, but I do consume protein powders as well. But those are the type of foods that I'll have earlier in the day, as well as like fish, like especially white fish. I find that that's really easy to digest. Doesn't sit heavy on the stomach at all. But then later in the day, that's when I'll have some of the more dense foods, like again, the steak or some of the more fatty fish and stuff like that, like a fillet of salmon or something. I usually have that in the evening. And those are my primary sources. Now, you can still get protein through your plant-based foods as well. Like virtually all foods have some protein in there. Like even your vegetables, even your carbohydrate foods like pastas and oatmeal and breads and whole grains, like they still have protein in there, but it's not a high volume of protein. But it still counts. It still goes towards your daily total. But I always try to make sure to have a good solid source of protein with my meals. So it's usually a good solid source of animal-based protein or a supplement, right? Like if I can't get solid food protein, like chicken, meat, fish, eggs, dairy, then I'll have a protein powder or a protein bar or something like that to make up for it. And I always try to have that with each meal. And that's the key with protein, is you want the consistency throughout the day. Like a lot of people, the average people, they don't really have a solid serving of protein until their evening meal. Like that's their meat and potatoes type of meal. But all the other meals, like, oh, I'll grab a coffee and a muffin for breakfast, and I'll have a sandwich for lunch, grab something from the vending machine or whatever. Like there's no real protein of substance all day long until they sit down to their evening meal. And that's when they'll have their, a home cooked meat and potatoes type of meal. And that will be really their only substantial serving of protein, which is not enough to maximize protein synthesis and optimize athletic performance. So you want to make sure that you're getting protein throughout the day. Breakfast, with your lunch, with your dinner, snack before bed. Like if you can get those in there, then you're basically covering your protein basis. Again, if you'd like to discuss this in more detail, like I know I'm just scratching the surface on it, drop me a message through Facebook and we can chat about it. All right. Actually, another thing too, seeing we're on the topic of this, on my website, leehayward.com, I have a bodybuilding nutrition made simple PDF. I'll get the link for you so you can go download it. It's a free download, right? Available on my website. Where is this? Yeah, just go to leehayward.com and it's there. It's a free bodybuilding diet plan. It's called Bodybuilding Nutrition Made Simple. I'm actually going to post the link in our video chat window right there now. Download a copy of that. That'll put you in the right direction. Boom. All right, so that should be there posted in our chat window. Gotcha. All right. I'm going to answer a couple more, and then I'm going to get ready to clue it up because it is getting late. As you can tell, look, it's dark outside. When I started, it was daylight. The days are getting shorter. What else we got there? Art saying, when I worked in Milwaukee with a 45-minute commute, I ended up working out during lunch hour, and that seemed pretty productive. Absolutely. And you know what? I like how you made it work for your situation. And that's a great way to spend your lunch hour, obviously. I mean, versus sitting around the break room, having mindless chit chat or scrolling through your phone or whatever else people do in the lunch room during their lunch hour. Hey, if you have access to a gym, take advantage of it, right? I actually did that for one of my coaching students a while back because it's kind of similar situation to what Art was in. I had a long commute in the morning and in the evenings. And so he didn't really have time or didn't want to, get up ridiculously early in the morning for a workout because he had such a long commute. And then vice versa, didn't want to be working out after work because he had such a long commute to get back home. But he had access to a gym at his place of work. But his mental block was, well, I only have a lunch hour and I also got to get a lunch in there and change into my workout clothes and everything else. So like, how am I going to make this work? And I said, we'll make it work. So instead of having like hour-long workouts, we did 30-minute workouts. And those 30 minutes included the warm-up, the actual weight training and everything. and were very short, but we took advantage of the 5 days a week while he was at work, and we put together a program that allowed him to work all these major muscle groups during his lunch hour, and literally it was 30 minutes a day. And he made amazing progress by taking advantage of that opportunity that he had. So you can make it fit your schedule. And you know, we had someone ask earlier, like, what's the best program? You know, what's the best split and all. It's not that there's one right or wrong. It's what's the best for you right now based on your current situation, what you have available, and what you can do consistently. That's the best. It's what's best for you, not what's best on paper or what's best for Joe Blow, Mr. Olympia pro bodybuilder when he's trying to peak for competition. Like, no, it's what's the best for you. And that's where this can get really confusing, because a lot of times when we're following fitness influencers or we're reading books and articles and watching videos, they could be given really good advice for a specific person or a specific demographic or situation. Like somebody might have a content geared towards competitive bodybuilders peaking for competition. Well, that might be wonderful for competitive bodybuilders peaking for competition, but it might be terrible advice for a 50-year-old office worker who's got a wife and kids and a big commute in the morning, big commute in the evening. You know, like they're pressed for time on both ends of the scale. You know, how do you make it work for you, your situation, your lifestyle, your fitness goals, your body situation, your aches, pains, and injuries and ailments and all that? How do you make it work for you, right? Just because it works for the 20-something-year-old bodybuilder who has no wife, no kids, and is single and blah, 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 blah. You know, like what works for him may not work for somebody else, right? So it's not what's right, wrong. It's what's right for you in your current situation. And that's what we really focus on within the whole Muscle After 40 Blueprint program is how do you make it fit in that real life situation when you're not the only priority, right? You've got wife and kids and career and everyone's pulling at you and you're trying to accommodate everybody else and support a family and pay the bills and keep a roof over your head. And you feel like you're taking care of everything else, but you're neglecting your own health and fitness. Like, how do we make it work so that we can balance it out and still enjoy the process? And it's not a one size fits all answer. It's very often a customized approach for everyone. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of commonalities, but it has to be customized to the individual. And what Eric just mentioned there, taking advantage of that lunch hour, it's a great way to customize it for his situation. Neil says, thanks for the detailed answer. Have a great weekend. You're welcome. And likewise, hopefully you have a great weekend as well. Dad Physique says, I work 12 hours a day, so I end up having to use exercise bands on my break. I can still do some weightlifting, but not as much as I'd like. All right. That's another example of customizing it to your situation. You know what? If that is better than nothing, something's better than nothing. And you can make progress with resistance bands. And then if you do squeeze in a proper workout, like maybe on the weekends or whenever you got time to actually dedicate to a workout, you can kind of do that as your core lifts. And then you can fill in the gaps with the exercise bands. I've done similar approaches like that. It doesn't always have to be, hey, I don't have 2 hours to go to the gym and lift weights. Well, I don't have time to work out. Like, something's better than nothing. Like, if you got 5 or 10 minutes and do a little mini band workout, hey, that's moving you in the right direction. That's better than sitting on your duff doing nothing. And that's literally how I got started with my whole dad bod transformation to begin with, is I gave myself permission to take advantage of those little blocks of time, little breaks throughout the day, where, okay, I don't have 2 hours to go to the gym, but you know what? Hey, I got 10 minutes, I got 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Like, I can do something, and something's better than nothing, right? And it's by taking advantage of those little somethings and just letting it compound day after day and build that momentum in the right direction. Crispin saying, I prefer to work out in the morning. That's what works best for me. Absolutely. If it works for you, more power to you. And we've already discussed the benefits of morning workouts earlier. So great one for keeping consistent. What else we got there? Corbin saying, hello, enjoy. Will do. I guess we have some new people joining in. This is MD Mohan Uden. I know I'm butchering your name, but I try my best. How are you and where is your country? I am in North America, in Canada. That is my country. Hope you're doing well. A woman told me she drinks low fats. I asked her why. She said because of the sugar. I told her to try unsweetened almond milk. When you milk a cow, what kind of milk does the cow give you? Real milk, not non-fat milk or low-fat milk, Mike. Okay. Fair enough. I personally don't drink any milk. I do like dairy products, but I usually have yogurt or cottage cheese. And I'm just going to elaborate on that for a minute. A lot of people think milk is a good source of protein. And don't get me wrong, there is protein in milk. But there's more sugar in milk than there is protein. Sugar in the form of lactose. So if you look at the nutritional information on the milk carton, there's in a glass of milk, there's 8 grams of protein, probably about 12 grams of sugar in the form of lactose, and the fat will vary depending on whether it's fat-free, 1%, 2%, whole milk, whatever. The fat will vary depending on the type of milk, but it's usually in the ballpark of 8 grams of protein, 12 grams of sugar. So you're actually getting more sugar than you are protein in a glass of milk. Whereas with Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, it's basically the reverse. You're getting way more protein and way less lactose. So that's why, I personally prefer to consume my dairy products, the yogurt and the cottage cheese, because of that. You're getting a lot more protein and less lactose. Right? And I find that milk makes me feel a bit bloated and gassy, but I find the cottage cheese and Greek yogurt doesn't. And I'm pretty sure that's exactly why. It's because you're getting less lactose there. All right, so we got a couple other questions there, but they're too big for me to break down, and we're already over an hour and a half in. So I tell you what, guys, if you've posted your question and I didn't get around to answering it, feel free to drop me a message or drop me an email, and I'll do my best to help you out that way. But in the meantime, I have to clue it up because, as I said, it is getting late. It's getting dark, getting close to my bedtime, so I got to get to sleep myself. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the support. And we had some great questions. Another successful show in the books. So if you would like to elaborate on anything, as I mentioned, message me through Facebook or drop me an email. And if you would like some help with a one-on-one customized training and nutrition plan to fit you, your situation, your lifestyle, feel free to reach out, right? We can have a chat, brainstorm some ideas, and see if we can come up with a realistic action plan that's right for you. And if you're a good fit, then I may invite you to come join us over at our VIP Muscle After 40 coaching program, right? We've got a group of guys there who are going through our advanced VIP coaching program. And if you would like to become one of our next before and after success stories, then we can have a chat and see if this is a good fit for you. All right. Well, in the meantime, I'm going to clue it up. Have yourself a fantastic weekend. And I will be back again next week, next Friday, live at 5 with another Q&A. Have yourself a good one. Take care. Over and out.